New York and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning. Laura Styles, Rosenberg. Give it up for my bro Abiola Oke one time right now. Okay, Africa. Listen, we were in Ghana together.
Yes, we were.
You obviously spend more time on the continent than I have in my entire life. Where are you from?
I'm from Nigeria.
You are from Nigeria.
Yep.
And how often do you get to go back?
I go back maybe 10 times a year.
10 times.
That's a lot of time. That's like halftime.
Well, okay, Africa, so I guess you got to be on the continent.
Most of the time is spent in Joburg, though.
In South Africa.
South Africa, yeah.
Rosenberg's been in South Africa.
Not Joburg though.
Cape Town?
Cape Town, Durban.
You got to get the real experience, man.
Did you? Oh wow, never heard. Most people told me the opposite. Most people said if you do Cape Town, you're good. You do Durban, you're good. We did safari.
Who's telling you this?
A lot of variety of people.
Because Cape Town's predominantly white. Well, not predominantly, but they mostly control the resources.
So if you want the true city vibes, then you want Joburg.
You want Joburg. If you want the art, you go to Durban.
Got it. Durban was beautiful.
What's Durban about?
It's a heavy there's a heavy Indian influence in Durban.
Right.
Like 60-70% of the population is of Indian descent.
Right.
Delicious food, beautiful beaches,
Right.
lovely. Just a great place.
And they call a lot of people there colored, which is a very different concept here.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my hesitations many years ago was that I just felt like, speaking of South Africa, that the post-apartheid thing hadn't really got to a place where I could go there and actually enjoy South African people.
Right.
Like the concepts of colored and Afrikaans and these things.
Right.
I just wasn't.
It's like they're coming off of, Jim Crow.
Right.
That's essentially what it is.
So who would be considered colored?
It's a very, very weird. There is a definition for it. It's like a mixture. If you're, like a guy like Trevor Noah is considered colored.
I'd be considered colored.
He'd be
Because
considered
you're
colored.
Half white,
Biracial?
half black.
Right. But then there are a bunch of other mixes. If you're like half Indian and half, African.
Anything to not call you black.
Right. Or white. If you're not white, 100% white, you're not 100% black, you're colored.
And they do this specifically to not raise to bring people of melanated influence together. They want people to be separated from darker skinned Africans, to continue to demoralize them, to continue to make them feel like they don't belong. Right. That's my interpretation of it.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's a whole issue around land ownership in South Africa.
Well, that's
now.
more recent
And
one.
what is an Afrikaan?
White ones.
Yeah, white Africans.
White Africans are Afrikaans.
In South Africa.
In South Africa.
Oh, wow.
Right. So a lot of the Dutch, basically that's what it is.
I'm not African, I'm Afrikaan.
Right.
Which sounds insane.
It sounds
So now you
so
want to be all
nice.
you want to be all special with this way you say African.
Right.
I'm Afrikaan.
Wow.
And it's a different language. It's a whole nother thing. Right. And they take a sense of ownership for the country, and it's unfortunate what's happening in South Africa.
The complexities of all of that sense of ownership, being born there, feeling like you've contributed to where it is today. That's a complex thing. I understand.
Right.
I wish that it was easier for people to take a step back and look at a holistic approach to South Africa and recent history and what was done there in the 1900s. Like, it's not in the 1600s, it's not in the 70s, it's in the 1900s, what recently has been done there.
Right.
And understand the reallocation of resources, the reallocation of land, and for the benefit of the holistic of South Africa and its heritage.
So
I feel
are you
like
including white people in this as well as part of that?
if they want to be included in a way that benefits the original inhabitants of South Africa.
Right. I think that there has to be a slow transfer.
Okay.
A skills transfer as well. What has happened is that, there have been these radical ideas about 100% taking the land and taking the resources back, but you still need people who have the skill set to be able to generate value from the land.
That's right.
So there has to be a process where there's a transitionary period.
But isn't that what's happening?
The problem is that it has been slower than the rates that they promised. The ANC, the ANC is the main political party. I think it's the political party Nelson Mandela is home to, and they said that they were going to, I think, do like a 20% transference over like a 20-year period, and they've they haven't hit those numbers.
And that's
so
because,
that's frustrating to people.
Because people are standing in the way, court battles,
Right.
all of those things.
Right.
And I think that's what prompts people to just go, you know what? Transfer it now.
I mean, but then you look at you look at there's still a lot of racism in South Africa.
Of course.
Right. There was a young girl who was told she couldn't go to school because of the way she wore her hair.
I saw that story.
There was a whole
but there was a bunch of girls. It wasn't just
it wasn't
one.
right. There's a fees must fall situation.
What is that?
Fees must fall was when they tried to raise the tuition, the standard of the cost of getting an education in South Africa that prohibited very low income people from attending universities. And so the students rioted, the fees must fall. We have to go to school. And so it was a big deal. I think it was about, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. It got a lot of international
I heard about
press.
that, but I didn't know that was the name.
Yeah,
Fees must fall.
that was kind of like the big movement.
Right. Wow.
And then subsequently after that, they started to tear down a lot of structures and statues that represented the older apartheid regime.
Yeah.
And so that was a big deal in South Africa. South Africa's doing a lot, There was a Truth and Reconciliation.
Yep.
But there was a gentleman recently who was the husband of a senior executive at Nike, and he was on a beach somewhere. I think it was even in Cape Town. And, he records on his social media and he says, not a kefir in sight. And that's basically like the N-word.
That's the N-word.
Right.
Oh, I remember watching a video of a woman
Right.
who was she was a disgusting racist pig, but I believe she was using maybe that word.
Right.
And she didn't even want black police officers to get close
Yeah,
to
I
her.
saw that.
But she ended up going to jail, and that was like a big deal because that's not something that normally happens.
No, they don't typically go to jail over there.
Something happened with her, but I believe
No,
that
they according to the news story,
Yeah.
this
Right,
woman
right.
was screaming at black police
Right.
in the city streets and calling them,
Right.
how do you pronounce it?
Kefir.
Kafir?
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
And saying that word. And the news story said that they took her in and she went to jail. I don't know what happened after that.
Right,
Or
right.
how long she was kept in jail or
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. But it does sound like some of that stuff is trying to be addressed.
Absolutely. I mean,
Sounds like America. Some of that stuff is trying to be addressed.
we're still addressing
But
it today.
it's the power structure.
Right.
The power structure, and currently here in America, the power structure upholds white supremacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Those in power, those controlling the funds, those controlling the banks, uphold white supremacy. I don't even know how to
What makes South Africa so fascinating is demographics wise, what's the breakdown between white people and people of color?
I mean, it's predominantly black country.
It's 90%.
90%, right.
So that's
That's
what,
like Brazil.
that's-
Brazil's 90, 95%, some crazy number.
but that's what makes it so fascinating relative to America. Where in
Right.
America, as fucked
Right.
up as it is, you
Right.
can wrap your head around.
13%,
White people
15%.
came in, they took it over, and blah blah
Right.
blah blah. Slavery.
Right.
It's so strange when you're looking at a place where this tiny, you can't just get these people the fuck out of the. You know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
such an interesting,
Right.
bizarre concept if you're not from it.
And
By
it's
the
very
way,
right.
I found in the article on Ebony, the woman becomes the first person to go to prison for racism in South Africa.
See?
She used a K word.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
that's
word.
unfair.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's it. And
that's the word.
her name is Vicky Momberg, this piece of shit. She went to jail for 3 years for she was caught on camera making racist comments towards black police officers who responded to a call she made about robbery.
Wow.
Good for them.
Yeah, that's good.
First person in history, by the way.
But
so.
but the good thing is, that doesn't represent all of Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, what South Africa is going through, you have a very different social and cultural context in West Africa.
Well, that's true, but there is the theme of the control of resources
Right.
and who controls
Right.
the resources. Even when we went to Ghana
Right.
and having that conversation about where the money's coming from,
Right.
who controls the resources,
Right.
when the resources are pulled out of the ground, what can the the local governments actually do to monetize the resources being pulled out of the ground? A lot of that infrastructure is either just now getting to places in Africa,
Right.
or is still far away, right?
Well, the issue that we're seeing now is that the Chinese are building, developing a lot of infrastructure around the continent, right? And, the big challenge I'll take from Nigeria, for instance, was that, we had crude oil, but we don't refine any of the oil that we...
there's no other machines.
Right.
That's why I say the machines.
And so that's still a big challenge across the continent.
Right.
The Chinese are building airports, they're building roads, and they have these predatory loans, right? That essentially we can't pay back, and it's
sounds like
bankrupting
America.
countries.
America can't pay China back either.
Right.
Well said.
Right, but that's America. But a lot of that is America's doing, right?
Yes.
A lot of that is America's social construct.
Yes.
It's
This happened to Africa.
Right, this happened to Africa, and we still haven't weaned ourselves off of the effects of European colonization, and then the Chinese are compounding upon that.
For the audience, imagine you literally have gold in the ground, diamonds in the ground,
Right.
oil in the ground.
Right.
Countries that have industrialized will not sell you the equipment to do it yourself. They will only do it by a deal with you
Right.
to come and get the resources out of the ground. And then, even when you do that, the world won't buy it from you.
There's a guy in Ghana. Did you meet Cheddar?
Yo, that's bonkers, right?
It
So
is.
crazy.
There's
It
a
is.
documentary on the internet of the guys who actually pick the cocoa
Right.
that have never had chocolate before.
Yo, can you imagine that?
They didn't even know what was happening with the stuff. They was picking it. They need the money. They doing the
Right,
job,
right.
whatever. They didn't know where this. They never had chocolate before.
Wow.
Tomatoes. Nigeria is one of the largest tomato growers in the world, and we still import tomato paste from.
Because you
China.
can't buy the machine to process.
Can't buy the
tomato.
machine. We don't have the infrastructure to preserve the tomatoes, and that's essentially what's killing Africa from an infrastructure from a
Now,
business
is
trade
it
perspective.
literally, Abiola, that the equipment can't be like I've heard those stories, like legit
Right.
billionaires in Africa trying to go buy equipment
Right.
to do it in Africa. I've heard
Right,
that.
right.
And it literally companies are like,
I mean, not necessarily. I don't know if that's the case. You look at a guy like Dangote, for instance.
Right.
He's probably Africa's richest man.
I see his commercials on CNN all the
Right,
time.
all the time. He manufactures cement. They process and refine the resources. So, I mean, so I don't think that's
not true.
That's not true.
Got it.
That's not true.
So why the hold up on the refining
Bad
and the
leadership.
processing?
Bad leadership. I think another thing is that also we have a system in Africa that depends significantly on natural resources. And so if we're able to give these land leases to a lot of foreign countries, we don't need to necessarily depend on the refining of those resources to grow the economy. And so there's no need for it, right? What a lot of countries, specifically Nigeria, for instance, is
Wouldn't that
trying to
create
do.
industry and jobs?
Well, but they don't see it that way, right? They don't see it that way. It's bad leadership. I mean, it sounds very basic, and it's like it's a no-brainer. But that's how the
because if
continent's
you
been
have
run.
the industry and if you're
Right.
doing it yourself, people
Right.
get to the jobs and then
But the governments have consistently, the GDPs have consistently depended on natural resources without having to depend on the refining of those resources to basically to keep the company afloat.
But if you don't have industry, then you don't
Right.
have the middle income. You don't have the middle class, right?
There's virtually no middle class.
Right. And I
Right.
think that's a reoccurring problem across the continent is there's
Right.
no middle class.
And there's corruption. There's no middle class. I mean, the middle class is whittling away around the world. I mean,
Right,
even
for
the United
sure.
States
Yeah, for
middle
sure.
class is basically dwindling. So,
So, in your role at OK Africa and covering all of this,
Right.
where's the trend going?
the big trend right now is data. We're seeing a lot of multinationals come into the continent and own the data. You're talking about
The behavior of
the consumerism of local Africans, right? And you're talking about your Netflixes, your Facebooks, your Google. That's the big concern right now. Is data is essentially, the ownership of data will prove colonialism 2.0, so to speak. Right? Because that is how you look at Amazon. Amazon knows all of your shopping habits,
right.
everything that you purchase, and it is one of the world's most valuable companies today because of that.
and they have all of the what's their other business that's
Well, they have
Cloud-
the AWS, the cloud
servicing
services,
and-
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
And the
yes.
big challenge, of course, right now on the continent is that the cost of accessing data is it's cost prohibitive for many Africans to be able to, have cheap access to data. Cellular data is very expensive. And so what you're having right now is you're seeing even in the film industry, Netflix is going to come in and make it much cheaper for locals to be able to produce content that gets distributed around the world. And so you start to ask yourself, will we be competitive in a world where internet penetration is growing in Africa? And by that time, Do we have the industry developed that benefits local Africans locally? Conversely, you see China. China is very protectionist with the way it allows foreign internet companies to come in. If you're, Amazon and you want to play in China, it says, well, wait, we're going to develop this Alibaba thing first. Uber, you're going to have to wait. You're going, So Africa needs to develop a more protectionist approach to how it allows multinationals to come in.
Can that be done when you're depending on foreign income so much and foreign wealth so much?
Well, I think, but see, that's a private sector thing. Right. This is not an IMF situation. This is not an international, we're not taking loans for this. You can simply say that, look, if you're Google and if you're going to, operate in Nigeria, you have to develop talent. If you're going to be Netflix and you're going to shoot content in Nigeria or in Ghana or anywhere around the continent, you have to develop the skill set of the people so that they can depend for themselves and not have to depend on
And that's just not happening at all.
That's not happening. At scale, at least.
And so it's 100%. They pay the fees or whatever the money is that's required. They come in. They do what they want in Africa.
Well, some companies are trying. So, like, I know, for instance, some telecommunication companies have tried to implement sort of like a tax, a Facebook tax, so to speak, right? And so that if you access Facebook, they pay a tax, and then, Facebook has to pay that tax. And, but it's not working very well. Same with the music distribution, right? Music distribution predominantly had been ringtones, call-back tunes around the continent. And what you're seeing now is the streaming services are trying to create an opportunity for artists to be able to distribute their music. But the problem is that, again, it's cost prohibitive, so you have to basically price it for the market. But there are no local or scalable local solutions for music distribution and consumption. Still a lot of YouTube. And so my focus is how do we create an ecosystem, how do we create an industry that benefits Africans locally and allows us to own the data? Because eventually, if we don't own how we, our consumption habits, and if we don't own the data behind, how we travel, how we see ourselves, how we consume content, how are we going to use that data to determine how we see ourselves through content?
And this goes back to the infrastructure thing. Who's going to invest in building the infrastructure to make sure what you're talking about is possible?
Right.
And so who is? Is Dan Goat going to do it?
No, he's not doing it. I mean, that's what we hope to do, at least. We're raising a significant amount of capital this year so that we can develop a platform that allows Africans to be able to control their own data.
And when you say control your own data, you're meaning specifically how they socialize on the internet.
So, you look at AI today, right? And you look at data processing. How you analyze data and how you take that information and use it to build a solution. All your inherent biases and all of those type of things basically get infiltrated into that data. Right. And so if we don't control the way our data is analyzed, then those biases from, foreigners, from, all of the inherent biases that govern how policing works and all of those things. Right. We can't basically inform that. We can't inform how language is recognized by these, platforms, these tech platforms. And how nuance is represented, how facial recognition works, So essentially what I'm saying is that for us to be able to ensure that, software does not keep us from being able to play in the global space, we have to be able to be the ones that control how the data is analyzed.
And so the individual American doesn't control that. And when you say Africans control it,
right?
Are you saying that African companies?
African companies.
Got it.
Right. Not African citizens, African companies.
Right. Because I don't believe that Americans even know what's happening to their data. Most people, I don't even think our government knows. Our government's playing catch up. The government is a bunch of 80-year-old and 80-year-olds who are very ignorant to what's happening. I mean, I've seen some of the Congress, the Senate meetings with tech companies.
Right.
They don't know shit.
Yeah. I've watched some features on the people fighting to protect us and keep an eye on our data. It's a terrifying.
I mean, well, you see Cambridge Analytica, you see all that's happening, but at least there's some oversight to bring that to light. Right? I mean,
you mean from government or from
whether from government, from private institutions,
Got it.
It's not necessary. It's not foolproof. It's not perfect, But there are systems set in place.
And that's your aim.
Checks and
And that's your
balances.
aim in
To a degree.
Nigeria and Ghana and
Right.
places that are.
Right.
And do you feel like Nigerian government? Well, I don't know where Nigerian government is at today. I hear a lot of positive about the people and the ambitions.
Right.
I hear a lot of negative
Right.
about the current leadership.
I mean, there is a lot of negative about the current leadership. I mean, I think the big goal for the government right now is that they're trying to diversify revenue sources for GDP, right? They're trying to look at the tech sector. They're trying to develop other sectors, right? Because, again, the government has been heavily dependent on oil and natural resources.
Who would dare want to live in a government where the people are good, but the government's just out of control?
I mean,
I'm sorry, I just can't relate.
no, it's a mess. It's a mess in a lot of places. We think, and you know what's crazy is we look at America like, you know, and it is in many ways better than a lot of places.
Right.
But the flaws that we have are really shielded by the amount of money that we've made
Right.
in the last, I don't know, 50, 100 years.
And
where
income-
you have
right.
nations in Africa that have only been independent nations for going on 70 now.
Right.
Well, and we also have flaws in our government that are extra pronounced because we have been able to be educated for so long and people have been able to understand just what our country's capable of.
Right,
You have some countries in which people are fine with the government because they have no idea. They don't even necessarily understand the level to which they're being oppressed because they don't know what other opportunities exist
That's all they know.
in other nations.
Right.
Not to say that our government doesn't royally suck, because it does. But there were certain things put in place early on that even amongst the sucking protected us in certain ways.
You feel.
So you feel.
Right.
Feel.
Right. And I think also the thing about American society that I appreciate is, you know, the media is a machine in that it's sort of like propaganda, right? And I say this also when I speak and I talk to a lot of filmmakers and I talk to Nigerian or other African content creators, that we need to leverage the media to promote this belief that, you know, we're capable and that we're proud of our identity, right? And so, you know, you watch a film about, you know, a firefighter risking it all, you know, to save some kids in a building here. You watch films about soldiers going to, you know, fight on behalf of the country. And there's this valor, there's this honor, there's this, you know, commitment to the Constitution, you know. There are all of these, you know, ways that American media creates this notion of and this identity of what
Pride.
it means. Yeah, this pride, but what it means to be American and what you demand and expect
It is
from-
marketing and it is
Right.
propaganda.
Right. And so we need more of that on the continent, right? We need more propaganda. We definitely need more propaganda.
Do you feel like some of that is happening? I mean, I don't remember a time, 2018, you know, as much Pan-Africanism as I grew up around in my home and
Right.
family.
Right.
I don't remember a time where it was mainstream for Africans and the diaspora to embrace and have fun
Man, listen.
and have fun around a moment like what happened with the Black Panther.
I was, throughout college, I went to Howard for a bit, and then I went to City College in New York, and there's still people from college that call me Chris today.
Chris.
Yeah. My name was Chris for at least maybe like 6-7 years.
Why?
Because you weren't proud to be African, or at least you didn't want people to screw up your name, right? People would make very, very silly remarks about whether Africans lived in trees, you know, the tired tropes and things of that nature. And it's really amazing right now to see how African culture has been embraced and has been, it has a lot of influence on popular culture today. And it wasn't always like that.
Right.
You know, I think that social media has a lot to do with it. I think that the internet allowed Africans to basically take over the narrative and share what Africa means to them, right? And so you're seeing way more African Americans visit the continent. You're seeing, you know, Black Panther was amazing, right? You know, I think what Black Panther also did was, you know, ideologically it showed that, you know, Africa can envision itself as a progressed place in the future. Right, because most of the images that we saw of Africa or that we see of Africa in Hollywood is a war-torn country, or, you know, famine, or some infrastructural decay, and all of the narrative, all of the tired narratives that we know about Africa. But what Black Panther did was it showed also that there is it also talked about the relationship between African Americans and Africans in a way that I'd never seen before. You know, I interviewed Ryan Coogler right after he came out, right after the film. And I was even asking him, how do you get away with that? And he said, you know, he told Disney, like, look, if I'm going to make this film, I got to go to South Africa. I got to go to Joburg. And
Well, he's from the Bay Area, too,
Right.
which is where I was born. And that conversation is,
Right.
it happens,
Right.
you know, about,
Right.
you know, why hasn't Africa and the wealth of Africa
Right.
stood up and been like, yo,
Right.
we see what's happening,
Right.
and which is starting to happen
Which
now.
is starting to happen.
Part of the reason I was invited out to
Right.
Ghana for this,
Right.
And this is the year of return, which
Right.
is 400, the literal 400-year mark
Right.
of the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, which is 2019. It started in 1619,
Right.
and saying, hey, come home. This is your home. You have
Right.
a place. You're welcome here.
Right.
Come learn.
Right.
And it was amazing. It was amazing.
And I think it goes beyond even just social media. You know, you're seeing collaborations with artists that you play a lot. You play Davido here frequently,
Yeah.
right? There have been collaborations with African artists and African American artists, and they're continuing to happen. You're seeing more Africans in the diaspora, get roles in Hollywood. You're seeing more African stories. You're seeing British African actors from playing roles in Hollywood and being not being shy about representing their African heritage. But you're also seeing it in the corporate environment. There are a lot of Africans now who are whether it's at Uber, whether it's at Nike, who are socializing within the companies what it means to be African.
Shout out to Bozeman St. John, too, a
Right.
super, super duper executive.
Right. Right.
In the marketing world.
I mean, she aight.
you know
You know what I'm saying?
Shout out to Bose Waves Group.
Yeah, it is really interesting too when you think about that, how much more growth there is to do.
Right.
Think about, where we are relative. It's so, I know it sounds hard for us because people have gone through so much.
Right.
It's so early. It's still, 2019 is still we're so close to our parents
Right.
grew up through things that we would just be like, what, that was life? This is how people thought?
Right.
So, it's worth it sometimes to take a second, think about a Black Panther and how that it was taken in by the nation and feel how special that is.
One of the top 5 grossing movies of all time, U.S.
Pretty much.
It wasn't, and I always point this out that it's so double important.
Right.
You have, in one sense, it's amazing to see little Black kids being able to say Wakanda forever.
Right.
And it's almost just as important to
Right.
see little white kids saying Wakanda forever.
I can say it's even more important.
It builds in terms of
It's
what
even
that
more
means for
important.
the future.
Oh, listen, I sat
That's everything.
when I saw Black Panther, I was sitting next to 2 white kids, and I saw one of the kids was asking her parent, Mom, what's a colonizer?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't happen through mainstream media where you're forced to answer your kid and talk about what the impact of that means. What does that mean? And I think that it's a beautiful thing to watch. I think the other thing is we discount the importance of seeing, what a future with us looks like, a future where we're included means, right? A lot of technological revolution, a lot of technological innovation comes from sci-fi, comes from being able to imagine a world, whether it's flying cars, whether it's teleportation, and this stuff inspires,
Advancements and creativity.
Yeah. And so if our youth are able to see themselves in the future and see themselves on their own terms, I think that starts to shift the way we build for the future as well.
You've been to Ghana how many times?
That was actually my first time in Ghana.
Really?
Right.
I've said on the air, I'm going to reserve my, joy.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and let you articulate, because you can compare other
Right.
things you've seen in Africa,
Right.
obviously, to going to Ghana now.
Right.
Like you can kind of.
Right.
So talk about Ghana.
One of the things I was extremely surprised about was just how, first of all, the airport.
The airport's phenomenal.
The airport's
Nicest airport you ever
phenomenal.
been to.
Really?
It's up there
Phenomenal
with tippy
airport.
top.
Wow.
Tippy top.
That's big.
It was amazing. And then you get there and, the customs officials want you to fill out every single thing on the form. It was great. And I think the thing I loved about Ghana that was unexpected for me was that they truly live Akwaba, right? Akwaba means welcome. And basically everywhere you went in Ghana, you felt welcomed. You felt like as if it was your home. And, I often, I'd never been to Ghana, but I'd always heard about how warm and brotherly, and, Ghana is and how it's rooted in Pan-Africanism. I always because of what I'd heard, I've always told my African-American friends who wanted to visit Africa, I'd say, go to Ghana or Senegal first based on what I had read. But now I understood why it all made sense. I mean, we were at the slave castle.
Yeah.
And you were able to get a narrative that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And the fortunate thing for us when we were visiting the slave castles is that we had an African-American.
I hate calling them castles, by the way. That bothers me.
Right.
Because castle gives it this whole, like,
grandiose
fantasy, like celebratory,
Right.
like I know what you mean.
that shit is fucking terrible.
It was. I mean, we were in a dungeon that typically holds 200 people, and there was about 100 of us in it, and we were there for maybe just 10 minutes.
It was the worst experience.
Worst experience.
And they closed the doors dark. You can still smell just the disgust. Like it's bad.
It was hot, and we 10 minutes, and we knew we were coming out.
Yeah.
Now just imagine, imagine never knowing whenever you'll get out. But Ghana was great. The food was, the jollof was okay.
Yo, that's hate. Don't do that. Don't do that. There's a thing y'all got to know about jollof rice. It's a battle on the continent. Senegalese jollof, Nigerian jollof, Ghanaian jollof.
Right. Everyone's.
I'm told by a Nigerian, by the way,
Right.
that Ghanaian jollof is more consistently on point.
Which Nigerian told you this?
There was someone on our trip. This was I'm not gonna put them out there because I don't want people coming for them.
No, that's not safe.
But I'm only bringing this up because you tried to act like the jollof was just okay.
I mean, listen, when you come from Nigeria and you have Nigerian jollof, Ghana jollof is just okay.
Senegalese people will say a whole other thing.
Okay, but I will say Senegalese jollof is the best jollof, in my opinion. Senegalese food.
I can't believe you did that.
Listen, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that, but Senegalese jollof really is amazing.
Winnie, where are you from?
I'm from South Sudan and Uganda.
And what do you say about jollof in the back? Senegal all day.
Senegal.
All day.
No argument.
Maybe we need to have a jollof.
A jollof off.
Yeah.
Let's have a jollof off.
We need a jollof off.
We
The
definitely
world
need a
jollof off would be popping. It'll be a good time. What else about Ghana?
So the thing about the president also, he came to talk to us. He came to tell us about, what he felt was the importance of African Americans coming back home and actually getting citizenship and living and doing business in Ghana. I thought that was really important. I think Ghana has...
I'm going. You guys gonna be a dual citizen. I just want y'all to know. You ready? I'm going in.
As you should.
Be a citizen of Ghana. You in?
Yeah.
You gonna get one too?
Yeah.
You gotta make
I'm
the
going
trip.
to
You
Ghana in
didn't make the
August.
trip. You
Yeah,
didn't
I'm
make
going
the
to
trip.
Ghana in August.
For what?
With my crew. With my the show I do.
What's it called?
The mix up.
Oh, okay, boom.
Okay.
Music.
Music, life,
We got
culture.
Abiola. You got to put him in the game.
Listen,
Yeah,
we're going to
yeah.
put you in. We're going to do the full circle. We're going to do that.
All right. Yeah, I'm with it.
Let's definitely take you to take you to eat. There's really cool places. There's this place we went to called Front and Back. That
Front
place
Back's a good-
was
great
great
spot.
spot. And there's something I'm actually going to be bringing to Ghana later in this year. Later in the year, actually, if you're going in New Year for New Year again,
Yeah, I'll be there.
We'll definitely do that. But I think it's great, man. I think Ghana's going to lead the way. I mean, Kwame Nkrumah was one of the pioneers of Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
Right? This notion that all black people are one. And regardless of where you came from, when we stood in those dungeons and the guy said, when these men and women were here, there was no Jamaica, there was no St. Kitts, there was no Haiti. We were all just Africans. Yep. Right? And I think that that's important for, I always try to promote this message that, for many black people that live in America, your history didn't start with slavery.
That's right.
Right? The history started long before that. This was just a moment in time that just, was unfortunate, but there's way more richness to us. And Ghana really espouses that.
Yeah, it's very hard. I know for many people here,
Right.
And in the diaspora, if you're in Brazil, if you're in the Caribbean, wherever you are, and even in the UK, and being black, right?
Right.
To get beyond,
Right.
getting to great, and beyond is hard. And
Right.
when you're black and in America,
Right.
all I know is my last name is tied to a plantation in South Carolina.
Right.
And that's that. And, my great-grandmother is Cherokee and Native American. And on my mom's side, you can go farther back
Right.
because they, as Jewish people running from, oppression and the Nazi regime and all of that, they still were able to bring along their heritage.
Right.
Black people, it was against the law to hold on to your heritage. You would be killed. And I think that concept, right, that literally so you wouldn't die,
Right.
your more recent ancestors made sure you weren't killed by giving you a name that was acceptable, by practicing a religion
Right.
that was acceptable,
Right.
by even, pressing their hair or keeping their hair a certain way or whatever to make sure nothing hurt you so
Right.
that you could survive. That
Right.
happened.
Right.
That concept hasn't happened to anyone on planet Earth where you could not bring your culture with you
Right.
or you would die.
Right.
Right? And I think that piece, like even you opted to change your name to Chris.
For
But you
assimilation.
knew your origin.
I did know my
you
origin.
opted into something though.
Right.
Many people that don't understand black folks, the pain, the anger, and all that, it's because your family opted in
Right.
to this American thing. So when you got here,
Right.
whatever the rules were,
Right.
I'm in America, so that's what I got to do to be here.
Right.
That's not the case for black people.
No.
And so that's where the anger starts, is because it happened to you. And it's hard for you to get, right? And then you hear and then there's the bullshit, oh, African people, they don't even like black people like that. Oh, which is farthest from the truth in my experience.
Right, right, right. I think a lot of that has to do with, the narrative. And I think that's what's changing now, right? Visiting a place, you saw Anthony Anderson initially, it was reserved at first. He didn't say much. And then eventually you start to realize just how familiar a lot of the mannerisms are.
Yeah.
Right. You start to realize just how similar we are in the way we cook and the way we talk and I think,
Even the way we socialize.
The way we socialize.
Yeah.
One of the things I love so much about Ryan Coogler was talking about how when he went to Joburg, they took him to a township and they said that they were going to do a ritual. And so by ritual, he thought they were going to be like face painting and like drumming and like,
And it was a barbecue.
It was literally a barbecue.
Yeah, he told us that
It was a
story,
cookout. And, he was like, yo, we do this shit in Oakland, And so like the importance of, the role of your mother in the household, in the family, the role, how you relate to music, how we dance, all of this stuff still remains with us. But, you're right. I think that one thing we have to acknowledge is that there is a different culture, right? We're different culturally. I think we share a common oppression, a common history. But even on the continent, there are different cultures, right? President of Ghana said something that was really important. He said, if there's not a free black nation in the world, a truly free and self-determined black nation in the world, then there's no way black people in the world will ever be free.
And unless Africa gets respect, black people will never get respect.
Right.
That was one of the reasons I was so excited to go back, is because I want people to know that black people getting respect here in America and all of the things that we stand for, it'll happen that much faster when this country knows there's other places for us to call home.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because the intangible, and not even, and the tangible things that black people have done for America, whether it just even more recently in entertainment, and when I say recent, I mean the last 100 years in entertainment and sports and all of that carries this nation. That's one of the biggest exports from this nation
100%.
is black music.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
what we do. When we start calling another place home, the tone's gonna change.
Absolutely.
That fast.
And also we have to understand, at least as Africans, right? We, and when I say Africans, I mean continental Africans, Africans living there first gen, we have to understand the impact and the influence that African American culture has had on the continent. One of my music idols is Fela Kuti, right? And Fela initially was singing high life music.
That's right.
Right? It wasn't until he met, Sandra Isidore, an African American woman, who told him to use his music as a revolutionary tool. Right? Afro beats, you want to talk about Afro beats today, but the Afro beat artist archetype is a hip hop artist.
That's right.
So there's a lot of,
And Afro beats as defined by Fela Kuti, who coined the term.
Right.
Right? He was incorporating James Brown.
James
he was
Brown.
incorporating a lot of influences.
Right. And so, there's a symbiosis that we should not ignore, a relationship that is an exchange, right? I don't believe that a black person can appropriate another black person's culture. I really hate when I hear that,
I've never heard that before.
Oh, yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. During the Afro-Punk Festival, there was a big conversation about whether African Americans could appropriate African culture by wearing dashikis or whatever the case may be. And
that doesn't make any sense.
It's a ridiculous conversation.
That doesn't make any
But it
sense.
happens.
Wow. His name is Abiola Oke, OkayAfrica, which is a part of the OK Player.
Slightly different. It's a different company, so
Okay.
it stands on its own.
But it's a relationship.
But as a relationship.
Got it.
Yes.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on today, man. And I'm sure we're going to be having more dialogue because we're going to be doing a lot of work going back and forth. There's also another festival out there, Pan-Africanism,
Yes.
which is happening in early August, which is celebrating the emancipation of black people and Pan-Africanism and all those things. So look up Pan-Africanism as well. And we'll be doing the Full Circle Fest again at the end of December and bringing more people back. How many people? First year it was 7 people. Second year it was 97.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can even bring, some like loud, supportive, influential white people. You know what I'm saying? To come
Absolutely.
celebrate.
You're welcome
Listen.
to come.
Or
Come.
some Latinos.
There was some white folks.
There was some loud, supportive white people there.
All right, well, I'm not as loud as I can be.
You sure?
I'm as loud as
You
he
sure?
is. Come on.
Come through.
I'm there. Let's do it.
December 26th
Yep.
through
January
January 3rd,
3rd.
4th.
I would
is
love
the
that.
zone.
I would love
Right.
that.
It's a great time, man. Parties, culture.
Right.
It's good.
It's good.
It's real good. And just good people, man. Thank you.
Right.
Abiola Oke. Give it up one
Thank you so
time.
much,
Okay,
guys.
Africa.
Thank you. Appreciate it.